Welcome to Climate Quickies, bite-sized nuggets of climate goodness from our TEDxLondon experts in under 10 minutes. In this week's Climate Curious, we're taking stock of the solutions we have access to today with founder and executive director of the Global Warming Mitigation Project, Jacquelyn Francis. In her words, focusing on the solutions gives you the motivation to wake up every day and be like, okay, we're doing something. From solar huts bringing power to sub-Saharan Africa, to electric drones zipping through the US delivering vital medical supplies, we're looking at reasons to feel optimistic about existing climate solutions, on what it means to be a solutionist and why this is so important. Here's Jacquelyn Francis. Stay curious.
Today we're joined by Jacquelyn Francis. We're at TED 25, and I was just saying to you, one of the things I love about coming here is meeting all the amazing people working on so many incredible ideas and solutions. And you are the founder and executive director of Global Warming Mitigation Project. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yes, so the Global Warming Mitigation Project is specifically focused on reducing, removing, and replacing greenhouse gases. And our initial project is the Keeling Curve Prize, which identifies climate solutions around the world in 5 different categories. And the reason we pick these categories is because climate change is a systems problem, and these kind of cover the bases. So it's carbon sinks, which can be both nature-based or high-tech, and we focus a lot on, renewable energy in places where people are most in need of energy solutions. Finance is one of my favorites, and because that is really the crux of the problem, is we just need to make a big financial shift from what we're doing now to what we're going to need to do in the future. Transport and mobility, which is always very interesting because the solutions are usually so innovative.
Right.
And social and cultural pathways, which is basically about behavior change.
Incredible. Okay, that covers like all the bases, as you said. I want to get into the specifics, but before I do that, can I just ask you what brought you to this work and your background a bit?
Yes, so I was running something called the Aspen Science Center in Aspen, Colorado, and I was very involved in thinking like a scientist, getting people to think like everything has kind of the scientific circularity of how we should think and how we should question and change when necessary, and also have curiosity. And I decided to go back and get a master's, and I got a master's in energy policy and climate science. Okay. And it really struck me that this was my calling.
Right.
Climate and climate solutions are such a incredibly intense, 3-dimensional, complex puzzle.
Right.
And that was where my brain liked to tackle the challenge.
Right.
So it really became something that I knew right away is my calling of being able to solve such difficult problems.
Right, and this is a question I have for you. We love solutions here at Climate Curious, and I feel like you're immersed in them. And it's one of the things I think that before I started working on climate, I think I had this misconception that we didn't know what we needed to do. Like there was a problem, but we were like struggling or like reaching in the dark for solutions. That's not the case, and I guess you're immersed in them. So I guess what perspective does that bring you on this problem?
That's exactly the reason that I started this prize, is because I was like, we have solutions everywhere. They're like dropping out of the sky. Yeah. Why aren't we implementing them at scale? Yes. So my whole concept was about let's get people excited about the solutions, get people to understand that we do have them, and that if we put in the effort and the financial backing, that we can actually get to a place where we have a future that's not as damaging to our planet, and that can allow us to have a society and a ecosystem with animals and plants that is survivable and thriving.
Can I ask you, how many years has the prize been going?
We're now in our 8th year.
Incredible. That you must have seen a lot of change over that time in terms of what's possible and what's being done. I'm curious to know, what are some of the things that you've worked on, you've supported, that really excite you?
I love things that have to do with circular economy and things that actually look at, waste to resources or waste to financial gains.
Yes.
And I love things that really kind of look at the earth and the earth systems and how they regenerate themselves, and how human beings can create some kind of economic stability with these regenerative practices, and how we can become more kind of in tune to the rhythm of the world around us.
That's beautiful. I guess this idea of being inspired by nature, right?
I've always been inspired by nature.
Yeah.
Nature's
Do you have a deep
fabulous.
connection? Like, do you have a connection to nature and the environment? Is that something that inspires you in this work?
Yes, I grew up in Aspen, Colorado. It's a well-known city that's very high net worth, but it's also incredibly nature-oriented, and I love being outside. Whenever I'm stressed, I'll put on good music and go for a hike or a walk or a bike ride, because that's where I feel, most connected.
It's one of the things I've been reflecting on this week with the podcast. We started it because we're all based in cities, and we kind of knew intellectually how important fighting the climate crisis was and coming up with solutions, but many of us didn't feel that connection or hadn't found our connection yet. So one of the most beautiful things with doing this has been like discovering each of us as a team, our connections to nature and what that looks like in different ways. I'm curious to know if your focus on solutions in your work, how does that change the way you approach this problem and your mindset and the kind of psychology and maybe perspective it brings you?
I think that's a really important question, because focusing on the solutions actually gives you sort of the motivation to wake up every day and be like, okay, we are doing something. And you asked me in the questions, what is a solutionist, and how do I find myself being a solutionist?
Yeah, because I've not heard that word. It's phrased in that way before. So tell us a bit more about it.
Well, there's a lot of people that are, in academia, and they're researchers, and there's a lot of people that are advocates or activists, and they're maybe out on the street, and that's great. But I'm the kind of person that I like to roll my sleeves up and navigate how to do something. And so, we can't just wait for someone else to do it. And I feel like a solutionist is somebody that just goes out there and starts either coming up with the actual innovation and implementing it, or like what I do, which is activating and elevating solutions all over the world in a way that's like getting them financing, getting them visibility, getting them to a success rate.
And you mentioned this idea of scale. That's super important, right? How do you help people do that?
Well, so to date, we've given out $2.25 million to prize winners over the last 7 years. We're on our 8th year cycle right now. And that $2.25 million has turned into $2.4 billion in add-on funding.
Wow.
So that's an example. That's 1,000x. That's example of how I see scaling, where these projects, they win the prize. We give them other things like a suite of services that kind of gets them visibility, it gets them on stages, and it gets them some capacity building, because we have an internship program. And that's working. We see people scaling. And we've seen one of the organizations that won early on is a publicly traded company now. And others have gotten, much bigger add-on funding and grant money and have gone on to do much bigger things. And that's what we need.
That's incredible. I'm curious, you said you work all around the world. Would you maybe give us some examples? And it could be from maybe the most recent cohort of things that you're supporting around the world, of solutions.
Yes, sure, absolutely. We have, there's a company that does energy in Africa. They do these solar huts that are kind of hubs, community centers. And they're popping up all around Africa, so people can go there, charge up their stuff, have the community gathering experience, and then go back home with like freshly charged lights and cell phones and so forth. And then we have a company that I just read about was drones that are actually electric drones delivering medical supplies like
Incredible.
Organs, and
Wow.
that's in the eastern United States. We have, projects in everywhere from Mongolia to Indonesia to South America. We're getting a lot more solutions out of South America right now, which have to do mostly with like the Amazon and the idea of this like circular economy that I was speaking about, which I find so fascinating and so interesting.
Incredible. So if people want to find out more about this, where can they go?
Our website is gwmp.org.
Fantastic. I have a final question for you, which is, right now people are feeling many kinds of ways about the world, and particularly about the climate crisis. There's a lot of doom, there's a lot of inevitability. Someone said the F word in climate is fatalism. How do you not get stuck there?
because I see all the solutions every single day, and they're really inspiring. And I feel like there's also a business case for it. You know, I feel like the political winds will shift back at some point soon, and then, you know, I think people will understand that we have to do this. It's not a matter of like, you know, let's give up and wave the white flag. It's a matter of like rolling up our sleeves and being like, yeah, and it actually, it is a world where we will be thriving. And I think that that's the most important thing, is to give people the kind of excitement and enthusiasm about a quieter, cleaner, you know, more pristine world.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Jacquelyn, for joining us and sharing this with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this quickie.
This episode was created by our superstar podcast team at TEDxLondon. Until next time,
Stay curious.